it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 12 of my 2024 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's Den Sweet Den, A Creature Was Stirring, Holiday Helpers, Christmas Dreams, Treat Cart Add-on Coffee, S'more the Merrier, Unicorn Picnic, Garden Before and Afters, and Perfectly Wicked. So I've stamped those images on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm going to start with my bears, and I'm going to use E51, E50, E53, and E57 for them. I'm going to start with the mama bear, and I'm going to do her shadows with the E57. I'm going to lay those in a bit more heavy on the right hand side since she's turned a little bit toward the left. I'm going to put her shadows down the back of her body. I'll also accentuate any parts that are kind of overlapping, like her little arms over her belly and her sides, and also the little divot between her thighs and her feet. And then also the area around her muzzle. And then I'm going to start blending that out with the E55. Just trying to scrub over that darkest shade with this medium tone and pull the darkest color into the medium color so that we don't have any harsh lines left behind. Now my markers are a bit dry. I need to do a refill day. And so it was a little bit trickier to blend. I had to work over that a little bit more than I would typically have to, but thankfully I was able to blend that out. And then I came in with the E53. I'm going to fill her mostly in with the E53. I wanted to have a little bit of a lighter patch on her belly, so I am going to leave that white for now. But I'll fill in her legs and her feet and just shape the area that I want to leave. I'll also add a little E53 to her muzzle, and then I'll start blending that out with the E51. I'll fill in her belly and bring in the E50 for a little extra highlight on the top of her muzzle. The baby bear I'm going to color the same way, but I'm going to flip my shadows since he's facing toward the right. His shadows are going to be mostly on the left. And then I will blend out with the E55. Now because his belly is facing away from the camera or the viewer, I am not going to save any room for that E51. I'm just going to fill him in completely with the E53 for the lightest. And then I will switch and add the E51 and E50 for his muzzle. Then I'm going to keep just those lightest three shades and I'm going to color in my plate of cookies. So my idea for this card was that the mom and baby are having a Christmas baking day or Christmas baking evening, whatever you want it to be. It's indoors, so it's whatever. But anyway, they're going to do all of their holiday baking in one go and just get it all done. So they've got their cookies for Santa. They've got their figgy pudding or whatever this frosted cake is. And then they're also going to have some hot cocoa for treats, some candy canes. They've got their mixing bowls out and, of course, their gingerbread house. So I did also do the icing on the top of the gingerbread house with those lighter two shades. And for the rest of the gingerbread house, I'm going to use E31, E33, and E35. I like to mix it up with the gingerbread houses. Sometimes I'll go a little bit more reddish brown. It really just depends on my mood. There's different types of gingerbread and some of them have molasses in them, which makes them a little bit darker. So it just depends on the kind of gingerbread you want to create and how dark you want to go with it. But for this card, I wanted to keep the neutrals a little bit more in the sandy color. So that's why I went with the E30s. And I am also going to use those for my shelf. So that is why I brought in the Perfectly Wicked stamp set. Even though that is a Halloween stamp set, I'm going to be using it to create a Christmas card today. It'll provide a little extra interest and make their space look homey and lived in. I'm moving on to some cool grays. I'm using C1, C3, and C5 for the handle of my whisk and also the top of my sprinkle jars. So those are going to have like little sprinkles spilling out of them, which we'll get to later on. But I'm just going to do the tops to be silver so that I can tie in the color of the whisk. So I did all of those, and then I'm going to add just a touch of that C1 to the milk glass. And then I'll bring in B00, BG10, and BG11. And I'm going to do the wrapping of my marshmallow bag, adding that BG11 down toward the bottom, and then blending up around the label with the BG10, and then finishing with the B00. I added a touch of that to the milk glass as well, and I'm going to do the plate, both the plate that has nothing on it and the plate that is beneath the cookies, just with a little bit of a soft aqua color to it. And then I'm also going to add this to the window of my gingerbread house. And I added details to one of the books in my book stack. Since this scene is taking place in the kitchen, I imagine that these are cookbooks, but they could be whatever. I'm moving on now to a lighter red. I'm using R22, R24, and R29. I'll do my holly berries. I'm going to do the heart on the top sprinkle jar and then the base of the second sprinkle jar. And I'll also do every other stripe on my candy canes with that R29. And I'm going to color the mug to be red as well. So I did all of those with the R29 first, and then I'm blending out with the R24 for the mid-tone. The candy canes are so skinny that I just used the one color to do those solid. But for everything else, I added in the R22 for a highlight. So all three shades on all of those. And then once I have those done, I'm also going to do every other gumdrop at the base of my gingerbread house. And I'll do more of the books. So for one of them, I'm going to do the center portion, and then for the other end, I'm going to do the top and bottom section. So again, just blending out with all three shades for those, just very carefully, since some of those spaces are quite skinny, especially those gumdrops, but I really wanted the coloring to look dynamic and to really look bright and festive for this happy little baking scene. So once I have the red done, I'm going to switch to a pink. I'm going to keep the R22 and add in R00 and R21. And I will do the top and bottom of the book on the left. I'm also going to give my bears some rosy cheeks with these shades, starting with the R22 and then blending around the edges with the R21. And I also added a bit of the R00 in there. I'll do the heart on the jar of the red sprinkles with just the lightest two shades. And then I'm also going to do the cake stand with just the lightest two shades. I wanted that to be a little bit of a softer pink. So just doing my shading with the R21 for that, and then blending out with the R00. And there's enough of difference between those two shades that it still looks fairly dynamic, even though I only used two colors. I'm going to do another one of the books in the stack, the one that has the aqua accents on it. And then I did the label on the marshmallow bag with just the R00. And then I also did the Dear Santa letter with the R21 and R00. Moving into green, I'll use G20, G24, and G28. And I will do my other sprinkle jar and the leaves on my holly. And normally I would also add in the G21 if I was coloring anything that would be larger than the items that I am on this card, because there is quite a big gap between the G20 and the G24, but Because the areas are smaller, they blend a little bit better, so I ended up just leaving that out. I felt like 4 shades was a little bit overkill for the tiny little areas that I'm coloring. So I also did the door on my gingerbread house and the little stool. That one is from Perfectly Wicked as well. I'm going to have my little bear sit on that. And then I did the spine of another one of my books. So you can see I do have to work quite a bit to blend that G20 into the G24. And it did kind of push back a little bit of color on the door especially. But anyway. Moving on to my second shade of green, I'm going a little bit more yellow toned with YG01, YG03, and YG05. And I'm going to do every other gumdrop on my little gingerbread house. I'm going to do the plant in the pot and the details on the darker green book. Because that G20 was a bit more yellow toned, I thought that these two different greens went really well together. I'm also going to use these shades for my mixing bowl, using the YG05 on the right hand side, blending out with the YG03, and then the YG01. And then I did want the inner part to look a little bit more shaded, so I'm going to go back over that with a second layer. I did a little bit of a second layer on the bottom of the bowl as well, but I especially wanted the inside of the bowl to have a bit more shading. And then I am going to use E43, E44, and E47 for the bottom of my cake, adding that E47 up into the little areas between the frosting drips. And I'll also color in the little teddy bear toy with this combo. I just wanted it to be clear that he was a toy, so I didn't want to use the same exact brown shades as the mom and baby. So I just made him a little bit of a different brown. So starting with the E47 on those, blending out with the E44, and then using the E43 for highlight. And then I still had 2 more things to color, and so I decided to just go with a darker red. I really didn't want to introduce another color into the palette, so I just went with a darker version of a color I'd already done. And so I used R24, R29, and the R39. And I'm going to do the flower pot, just so it has a nice festive red shade, and also the center part of that final book. And I really like how that red looks with the softer red that I had already done. So that is going to finish off the coloring, so I will trim these images out with their matching dies. So because I'm doing an indoor scene and I wanted it to look really cozy, I wanted to have some wallpaper, and I went to my Let It Shine Starry Skies 6x6 pad because I wanted something that would be soft and neutral, and I remembered that there was this pale tan shade. So I'm going to use that along with some of the light brown wood grain cardstock from Lawn Fawn. And I trimmed both of those out with the largest of the large stitched rectangle stackables. And then I also just trimmed down a thin piece of white cardstock that is going to be my baseboard. So I'm going to line up the wood grain piece at the bottom of the panel, so that can be my floor. And then I am going to glue this white piece right above it. I'm just going to set it right above and make sure it is flush on the bottom edge and the 2 sides, so I know it's on there nice and straight. Then I'll pop that into my MISTI so that I can stamp my sentiment, and I'm going to do a 2-step sentiment because I want 2 different colors. So for the first part, which is the majority of this sentiment, I'm going to use Versafine Onyx Black ink because it's just such a nice, rich black, and it's very pigmented. So I'm stamping Have a Berry Christmas, and then I'm going to stamp the word sweet in lobster ink. And I'm going to stamp that down 3 times to make sure that it is nice and bold so it stands up to the dark black of the rest of the sentiment. Then I'll pop my card base in my MISTI. I'm using some craft cardstock for my card base today. And I'm going to stamp on the inside in some walnut ink. And again, I'm going to do a 2-step stamping using the same shade though. And I use 3 different stamp sets to create this little inside scene with the little bear and this speech bubble and the "May all your holiday dreams come true." And then in that speech bubble, I'm going to add what is technically a little mouse gingerbread man, but sometimes I like to use it with the bears as well. I think it looks like a bear. The ears are a tiny bit big, but I think it works in the scene. So he's dreaming of a gingerbread bear. I thought that was really cute. So now that the stamping is done, I can go ahead and adhere this to the front of my card. It is an A2 standard size card, so it's 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall. And I'm just kind of pinching the corners to make sure that it's on there nice and straight, and then squeezing that down into place, avoiding that sentiment in case the black part is still wet. And then I can bring in my images. And first of all, I did use the little extra die to cut Mama Bear's hands apart so that she's able to hold things. And I am going to give her that mug of cocoa. So I just added a tiny dot of glue behind the mug, and then I'm going to adjust that until it looks like she's holding on to the handle. And one thing I like to do to incorporate the sentiment a little bit more into the scene is to kind of frame it up. So on the bottom of the sentiment, I'm going to place that mama bear, and her ears are kind of underlining the word Christmas a bit. And then to the left of the sentiment, I am going to add my shelf and just pop that up with foam tape. Mama Bear is glued flat to the card, but the shelf is popped up with foam tape. And then on that shelf in the center, I'm going to place the stack of festive books. And then on the right, next to the word berry, I'm going to add the little stuffed bear. And then on the left, I'm going to add the potted plant. So I thought that just added a nice homey touch. It makes it look really cozy. And then I am going to take the cake stand and add that right in front of Mama Bear's foot in the center of the bottom part of the scene. On top of that, I'm going to add my gingerbread house. This is the one that they are working on at the moment. Then on the left, I'm going to add the stool. I love that little 3-legged stool. I think it's such a cute little detail to add to a little homey cottage scene. And then sitting on top of that, I'm going to have the baby bear. And before that glue dries, I want to add the candy cane into his paw so he can be decorating. And I felt like that was a little bit too crowded, so I am going to slide the stool and the baby bear to the left just slightly. I want about the same amount of baseboard showing on the left and the right. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect, but pretty close. Then I'm going to take the little whisk, which I also die cut the little line in the bowl that allows you to stick things inside it, and also the cake on the plate, and kind of use those as placeholders to add my Santa's milk and cookies. And then I was trying to figure out if I wanted to reverse those images. I decided not. I liked them the way I had them, but I did reverse the direction of the whisk's handle. So I'm just gluing that into place now that I know that I want that pointed toward the right. And then I will pop that up with a little bit of foam tape down toward the lower left of the scene. And in front of that, I wanted to have the bag of marshmallows, so I'm adding a little bit of foam tape to the back of that, and then liquid glue where it is going to overlap the mixing bowl just a bit. So then I'm going to take the cake and add that to the plate, just using a little thin line of liquid glue, and then I will pop this whole piece up with some foam tape as well. And then to make that cake look a little bit more festive, I'm going to take the holly berries and add that to the right hand side, just overlapping the edge. I thought that just added a nice little pop of color down toward the bottom of the scene. Then I am going to take these two little sprinkle jars and figure out where I want those placed. I put the red one near the stool since the stool was green, and then I put the green one toward the bottom of the scene. And then I have the two little candy canes left. So I'm going to place one on the edge of the cake plate just to add a little bit more of a festive look there. And then the other one I am going to add overlapping the mixing bowl. So we've got the three little candy canes kind of tying the scene together. Then I am going to add some sprinkles, like I mentioned earlier, kind of spilling out of the jars. So the red sprinkles are going to go up near the red jar, and the green sprinkles will go near the green jar. And then while I was doing that, I also just decided to color and die cut some extra larger sprinkles just to kind of fill in a few little gaps in the scene and emphasize the idea that they are just going to town with their holiday baking. So I'm going to add those. And then all that is left is to add a little bit of glitter to this card. So I am going to add that to the frosting on my gingerbread house, of course, and to the gumdrops because they would also be sparkly. I added it to the marshmallows on Mama's mug and the holly berries and the frosting on the cake. I put it on the hearts on the sprinkle jars and the marshmallow on the logo of the bag, and then also to the larger sprinkles and to a little tiny bit of the books. I didn't want to overdo it on those, but that is going to finish up this card. So I will lift that up so you can see all of the fun details and give you another peek at the inside. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I get these little stories in my heads with these stamps and I just have to bring them to life, and I have so much fun doing it. I hope that you enjoy it too. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted when I post new videos. The products I use will all be listed and linked in the description bar below in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And I'll also put up day 12 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series in case you'd like to continue watching. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.